I woke up from surgery at midnight. The room was dark. My bed was empty on every side. The only person there was a nurse I had never met. My family was at a birthday party. They never came back that night. Before we start, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I truly love seeing all the different places this little community is watching from. It makes these stories feel even more special. Alright, settle in and let's get into it. That morning, I was lying in a hospital bed staring at the ceiling. My family had said they would come first thing in the morning. It was almost noon, and no one had walked through that door yet. And somewhere between the last dose of painkillers and the silence of that room, I understood something I had been running from my entire life. I was not a priority. I never had been. And the people who were supposed to show up had already made their choice. My name is Ellery. I work at a residential care home outside Philadelphia. Every day, I sit with elderly people whose families stopped visiting. I bring them coffee. I hold their hands on birthdays when no one else comes. That is my whole life. Showing up for people who have been left behind. And the part that still burns is that I know exactly how they feel. I have a brother named Thane. He is younger than me. And from the moment he arrived, I became the spare. Not abandoned, just unnecessary. My parents had what they needed. Thane was loud and golden and needed things constantly, and Colm and Lorna built their entire world around filling whatever he asked for. My father Colm showed love through logistics. He drove Thane everywhere. My schedule he learned about when I reminded him. My mother Lorna was the narrator. In her version of our family, Thane was the plot, and I was the setting. Someone would ask about me and she would say, "Ellery is fine. She is managing." Managing. Like I was a small fire that had not gone out yet, but was not worth adding wood to. The accident happened on a Friday evening in October. I was driving home from the care facility after a double shift. A truck ran a red light and hit the driver's side of my car. I remember the sound. I remember the glass. I do not remember much after that until the ambulance. I called my parents from the emergency room. Lorna answered. I could hear laughter and music in the background. I told her I had been in an accident and that the hospital was saying I needed surgery. She said, "Oh no." Then she put me on hold. She came back and said, "Sweetheart, we are at Thane's girlfriend's birthday dinner. Can you call us when you know more?" I was lying on a gurney with blood on my face, asking my mother to come to the hospital. And she asked me to wait. I said, "I do not think this can wait." She put Colm on. His only question was, "Is she okay?" Not, "Is she hurt?" Not, "We are on our way." Like he was checking whether this required his attention or whether it could be filed under Ellery is managing. Lorna came back on the line. She said, "Sweetheart, we will come first thing in the morning. I promise. Get some rest." Then she hung up. The birthday dinner was still going. I could hear the laughter cut off when the call ended. A nurse handed me a consent form and asked if a family member was available to sign. I told her no, so I signed my own surgical consent form under fluorescent lights while my family ate cake across town. I went into surgery at 9. I came out after midnight. The room was dark and quiet. No note, no flowers, no coat draped over a chair to show someone had been there and would be back. Just machines beeping and a window full of nothing. The hospital coffee on the side table was not mine. I think a nurse had left it there by mistake. It was cold. I drank it anyway because it was the only thing in that room that someone's hands had touched. Luz found me at 2 in the morning. I was not crying. I was past that. I was just lying there staring at the ceiling. She pulled a chair next to my bed and sat. She said, "Is someone coming back tonight?" I shook my head. She said, "Okay." Then, "I am staying." She stayed until her shift ended. 6 hours. She brought me ice chips. She did not ask where my family was. She just stayed. And that quiet act of presence was louder than anything my family had said to me in years. The next morning I opened my phone. The family group chat had 41 messages. Not one of them mentioned me. They were all about the birthday dinner. Photos, videos, selfies. Lorna had written, "What a beautiful night," with a string of hearts. Thane had posted a selfie with the caption, "Best girlfriend ever." 41 messages. 0 with my name. I had been in surgery while they were clinking glasses. And not one person in that chat thought to type, "Hope Ellery is okay." Lorna came at noon the next day. She walked in with a coffee she had already half finished. Nothing for me. I was the one in the hospital bed, but sure, she needed the caffeine. She sat down and said, "How are you feeling?" I said, I have been here since last night. She said, I know, but Thane's girlfriend was really shaken up that we did not stay at her party. She needed support. She needed support. A woman whose boyfriend's sister was in emergency surgery needed support, because the phone call had upset the mood, and my mother had chosen to comfort her instead of driving to the hospital to sit next to me. Colm came an hour later. His first question was about insurance. His second was about the car. There was no third question. He sat in the chair scrolling his phone while I stared at the ceiling. Then Thane came. He walked in with a protein bar in one hand and his phone in the other. He said that sucks about the crash. Then he asked if I knew that Bria had been upset all night because the phone call had ruined the mood. He said she felt really bad about it, like she was the one who deserved sympathy in this situation. He sat for 11 minutes. I know because the clock on the wall was the only thing in that room that moved. He did not ask what the surgery was for. He checked his phone 8 times. Every time I shifted to try and face him, my ribs reminded me they were broken. Then he left and said he hoped I felt better. He said it the way you say have a good one to a cashier. The moment that broke me was not any of those. It was later that afternoon. I was half asleep when I heard Lorna's voice just outside my door. She was on the phone. I could tell by the pauses that she was talking to a relative, an aunt maybe, or a cousin. She did not know I could hear. She said my daughter has always been like this. She dramatizes everything. It is probably not as serious as she made it sound. I lay there and listened to my mother minimize me to a relative while I was 10 feet away with fractured ribs and a body full of stitches. She laughed at something the other person said. Then she hung up, came back in and asked if I wanted Jell-O. That was the moment. Not the accident, not the empty room, not the group chat. That was the last time I waited for her to see me. I looked at Luz that evening. She was charting something at the foot of my bed. I said, "Can I tell you something?" She said, "Of course." I said, "I work at a care home. I sit with people every day whose families forgot them. I always wondered how that happens, how a person ends up in a room with no one. I do not wonder anymore." Luz stopped writing. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, "You are not going to be that person, Ellery. You have too much fight left." I said, "I know. That is why I am going to make some calls." The first was to Dr. Solve at the Portland Residential Care Network. She had offered me a supervisory role months ago. I had turned it down because I did not want to be far from family. I called her back and asked if the offer was still open. She said, "For you, always." The rest of the calls came fast. Landlord. Moving company. A new bank account my parents did not know about. I looked at the ceiling of that hospital room and I felt something shift. Not break. Shift. Like a door that had been propped open for 25 years, finally clicking shut. I was not leaving my family. I was accepting that they had left me a long time ago. I was just the first one honest enough to say it out loud. I did not tell them I was going. I packed while my stitches were still fresh. I booked a flight with money from an account they did not know existed. And I left without a goodbye. Because goodbyes are for people who will notice you are gone. What I did not expect was what my family would do when they finally realized the chair was empty. And what I did not expect, what I could not have prepared for, was who would end up in a hospital bed next. The flight to Portland was the first time I had ever gone somewhere without telling my family first. I sat in the window seat and felt the strange, hollow lightness of a person who had stopped carrying something heavy and had not yet figured out what to do with her hands. Dr. Solve met me on my first morning. She walked me through the facility and said something I had never heard in a workplace before. She said, "Here, nobody is invisible. If someone is struggling, we notice. If someone is missing, we ask." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because I had spent my entire life being the person no one noticed. But before I could settle in, my phone rang. Lorna. She did not ask how the move went. She did not ask about the new apartment or the new job. The first thing she said was, "When are you coming back?" Not "Where are you?" Not "How are you?" "When are you coming back?" Like I had wandered off at a grocery store and she was waiting by the car, I told her I was not coming back, that this was a permanent move. The line went quiet. Then she said, "I think you are overreacting to a difficult week." She called a car accident that put me in surgery and a family that did not show up a difficult week. She wrapped the whole thing in a sentence and tied it with a bow and expected me to carry it home. I did not argue. I just said I have to go. And I hung up. Within days, Colm sent a message. 2 sentences. He told me to stop dramatizing and come home. Dramatizing. The same word Lorna had used on the phone outside my hospital room when she thought I could not hear. It was the family vocabulary for anything I felt that inconvenienced them. If I was hurt, I was dramatizing. If I was sad, I was dramatizing. If I bled on a gurney and asked my mother to come, I was dramatizing. Then Thane called. Casual, almost cheerful. He asked if I was coming to Sunday dinner because Bria's mother was cooking. Then, almost as an afterthought, he asked if I was all healed up. But he did not wait for the answer. He was already talking about something else. That was Thane, not cruel, just completely, deeply unaware. I put my phone on silent and went to work. My second week at the facility, I met a woman named Marguerite. She was in her 80s. Her family had not visited once in over a year. She sat by the window every afternoon watching the parking lot like she was waiting for a car that was never going to pull in. I brought her coffee one morning and sat beside her. We did not talk at first. We just sat. Then she turned to me and asked a question that stopped me cold. She asked if I was also somebody's forgotten child. I did not answer right away. I asked her how she could tell. She looked at me with eyes that had seen decades of people come and go, and she said because only the forgotten ones pay this much attention. Only someone who knows what it feels like to be invisible makes sure she sees everyone else. I held my coffee with both hands and stared at the parking lot with her. I did not cry. But something inside me recognized something inside her. We were the same wound in different bodies. Two people in a building full of people. Both watching doors that the right person never walked through, and I know how that sounds. Trust me, it sounds worse when you are living it. She told me her daughter lived 40 minutes away. 40 minutes, close enough for a lunch, close enough for a Sunday drive, but far enough, apparently, to forget your mother exists. I did not say anything. I just sat there and thought about a birthday dinner across town that my family chose over my emergency room. That conversation changed how I worked. It changed how I walked through the hallways. It changed how I sat with people. Because Marguerite had given me the thing my family never could. She had named what I was. And being named is the first step to being real. Then one evening I made the mistake of opening social media. Lorna had posted a photo of Thane and Bria at some family brunch. The caption read, "So grateful for family," with a string of hearts. My name was nowhere. A cousin commented, "Where is Ellery?" Lorna replied she is doing her own thing right now, with a smiley face. She had turned my absence into a quirky lifestyle choice. Like I was on vacation, not recovering from surgery in a city I moved to because she chose a birthday party over my operating room. I put my phone down, but I would be lying if I said it did not sting. Because erasure hurts more when it comes with a smile. The weeks in Portland started to fill in the shape of a life I had not known I was allowed to have. The staff pulled me in without asking permission. Lunches, weekend plans, texts that said nothing important, just someone thinking of me. Then my birthday came. I had not told anyone at work. In my family, birthdays were never a thing. Lorna would send a text around noon, Colm would sign whatever card she bought. Thane would forget and send a late message. But when I walked into the break room that morning, there was a cake with my name on it. Candles lit, the whole team standing there. Someone had found my birthday in my personnel file. They started singing, and I could not move. I started crying. Not small, polite tears. The kind that come from somewhere deep and old. Someone asked what was wrong. I said nothing is wrong. I said I was crying because they knew. Nobody asked me. Nobody needed to be reminded. They just knew. And that had never happened to me before. One of my coworkers put her arm around me and said, "Of course we knew." She said it like it was obvious. Like birthdays are something you simply remember for the people in your life. That evening I thought about the 41 messages in the family group chat the night of my surgery. Not one with my name. And today people I had known for weeks remembered my birthday without being told. The difference was not love. My family would say they loved me. The difference was attention. And attention is where love actually lives. Then the calls started again. But this time, Lorna's voice was different. Softer. Warmer. She said she missed me. She said she had been thinking about everything. For half a second, I almost believed her. Then she mentioned Thanksgiving. The extended family was coming. Everyone would be asking where I was. She said it would mean so much if I came. She said it would show everyone that the family was strong. And there it was. Not, "I miss my daughter. I need my daughter at the table so the table looks right." She did not want me there because she saw me. She wanted me there because my empty chair raised questions she did not want to answer. But for a moment, and I am not proud of this, I almost said yes. Because the pull of that table was not logical, it was biological. The little girl in the hospital bed who just wanted someone to stay almost picked up the phone and booked a flight home. But I thought about Marguerite watching the parking lot, about a daughter 40 minutes away who never came. And I knew that going back to fill a chair for appearances would make me the thing I fought every day to prevent. A person who shows up where they are not truly wanted, just so the room looks full. I told her I was staying in Portland this year. She asked what she was supposed to tell people. I told her to tell them whatever she wanted. The line went quiet. She said people are going to talk. I said then let them. She tried once more. She said Thanksgiving is about family. I said I agree. And this year I am spending it with mine. I heard her breath catch. She was not expecting that. In her mind, family was a word that only pointed in one direction, toward her table, her house, her version of things. It had never occurred to her that I might build a table of my own. And, look, I am not telling you this to sound tough. My hands were shaking when I hung up, but sometimes the bravest thing you do is the thing your voice shakes through. That was the last call before the holiday. I put my phone away and started planning dinner at my apartment. My coworkers were coming, my small, real, chosen circle. Thanksgiving morning, I woke up early. I started cooking. The kitchen smelled like rosemary and butter, and something that felt dangerously close to peace. Music was playing. The table was set. I was standing at the counter cutting bread when my phone buzzed. Thane. I almost did not answer. But something in me, maybe the same thing that made me show up for strangers every day at work, made me pick up. His voice was different, not casual, not careless. Tight and scared in a way I had never heard from him before. He said, Ellery, Dad is in the hospital. They think it is his heart. The knife stopped. The music kept playing. And the kitchen that had smelled like peace 5 seconds ago suddenly smelled like the hallway of a hospital I thought I had left behind. I stood in my kitchen holding the phone and staring at the half-set table. Thane's voice was still in my ear. Dad is in the hospital. They think it is his heart. The same words. Hospital. Family. Emergency. But this time the roles were reversed. This time I was the one on the outside and they were the ones in the room. I could have stayed. Nobody would have blamed me. My friends were on their way. The food was almost ready. The table was set for people who actually wanted to sit with me. I could have said I hope he is okay and hung up and carved the turkey, and let them feel what I felt that night when I woke up alone in a dark room with no one coming. But I did not. Because I was not going to become the thing they made me. I was not going to be the person who chose a dinner over a hospital. I was not going to let their failure become my blueprint. I turned off the oven, I texted my friends and told them something came up. Then I booked a flight and went to the airport with flowers still on my hands. The hospital in Philadelphia smelled the same. That heavy, sterile air that sits in your chest and does not leave. The same fluorescent lights. The same hallway sound of soft shoes on hard floors. I had been here before. But last time, I was the one in the bed. Last time the hallway was empty and the room was dark and the only person who stayed was a nurse named Luz, who owed me nothing. I found the room. Colm was in the bed. Wires on his chest. A monitor beeping steady. He was wearing one of those hospital gowns that makes everyone look like they have already lost. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not the man who ran logistics and signed forms and never asked a third question. Just a man staring at a ceiling he could not control. Lorna was beside him. She looked like she had not slept. Her eyes were red and her hands were shaking, and when she saw me walk through the door, she broke. She stood up and reached for me and said the one word she thought would fix everything. She said, "You came." I said I came. But I did not step forward. I did not hug her. I stood in the doorway with my bag on my shoulder, and I said, "I am here. But we need to talk." Thane was in the hallway, leaning against the wall with his phone in his hand. He looked up when he saw me and something crossed his face that I had never seen from him before. He looked relieved. Not the performative kind. The real kind. Like he had been carrying something and did not know where to put it down. I walked into the room. I looked at Colm. He was awake. His eyes found mine and stayed there. I could see him trying to form a sentence. Probably something about insurance. Something about what needed to be handled. I spoke first. I told him I was not going to ask about the insurance. I asked him how he was feeling. His eyes filled. Not a lot, just enough. Because nobody had asked him that. Lorna had panicked. Thane had called people. The doctors had explained procedures. But nobody in that room had sat down and simply asked the man how he felt. I had learned something at the care home. That the simplest question is usually the one nobody thinks to ask. And it is almost always the one that matters most. He said he was scared. One word. From a man who had never, in my lifetime, admitted to anything softer than mild inconvenience. I nodded. I said I know. And I sat down. But I did not let the moment pass without saying what I came to say. I looked at Lorna, then at Colm. I told them I did not leave, because I wanted to punish them. I left because I needed to survive. I told them about the night of my surgery. About the dark room. About 41 messages in the family chat and not one with my name. About Lorna standing outside my door telling a relative on the phone that her daughter dramatizes everything, while I was lying 10 feet away with fractured ribs. About Colm asking about insurance and the car and nothing else. About Thane staying 11 minutes and checking his phone 8 times. I said I counted. Because when you are alone in a hospital bed, counting is all you can do. The room was silent. The heavy silence of people hearing the truth laid out in a sequence they cannot argue with. Lorna started crying. She asked me if I thought she was a bad mother, and I gave her the most honest answer I had. I told her she was not a bad mother, she was just one child's mother, and that child was not me. She stared at me. The crying stopped. Not because the pain stopped, but because the words had landed somewhere deeper than tears could reach. I was not accusing her. I was not yelling. I was naming what had always been true in a sentence she could not unhear. Thane walked in from the hallway. He had been listening. He stood at the foot of the bed, and for the first time in his life, he did not have something casual to say. He told me he did not know. He said he did not realize how serious the surgery was. I looked at him and told him he did not know. Because he did not ask. He stood there. No comeback. No deflection. Just a man hearing the weight of his own absence for the first time. I stood up, I picked up my bag, I looked at all 3 of them, I told them I wanted them to get better. All of them. Not just Colm. I said when he was home and rested, they could call me. But I needed them to call because they actually wanted to talk to me. Not because my empty chair was making someone uncomfortable, not because an aunt was asking questions, not because a table needed to look full. I said call me when you see me. Really see me. Then I walked out. The flight back to Portland was quiet. I expected to feel guilty for leaving again, but what I felt was steady. Like a door that had been swinging open for years had finally settled in a place that made sense. Not locked. Not wide open. Just resting where I had chosen to put it. I landed late. When I opened my apartment door, the lights were on. My friends were still there. The food had been reheated. The table was still set. And my chair was empty. Not forgotten empty. Saved empty. They had left my place. My plate. My glass. One of them looked up and said, "We waited for you." Another one pulled out my chair. Someone poured me a glass and raised theirs and said to Ellery, "Not because she belongs here. Because she finally remembered that she does." I sat down. And for the first time in my life I was sitting in a chair that someone had saved for me. Not because they needed me to fill it. Because they wanted me in it. For years I had been the empty chair at a table full of people who never looked at the gap. But here, in a small apartment in Portland, with people I had known for months instead of decades, someone had looked at that chair and said, "She is coming back. Keep it warm." Colm recovered. He came home within the week. He did not call. But Lorna started sending messages. Short ones. Every Sunday. Things like, "I thought about you today." Not performances. Not requests. Just small, quiet acknowledgments that I existed. I did not always respond, but I read everyone. And I noticed they never asked me to come home. They just said I was thought of. That was new. Thane called once. There was a long silence before he spoke. Then he said he did not know how much I was hurting that night. I told him now he did. He said yes. He did not say anything else. But he had called. And from Thane, that was the biggest step he had ever taken towards someone who was not himself. I still work at the care home. I still sit with Marguerite by the window. She still watches the parking lot. Her daughter still has not come. But I come. Every morning. With 2 coffees. And we sit there together, Two women who know what it means to be forgotten and who chose to remember each other instead. If you have ever been the empty chair, the one nobody saved, the one nobody noticed was gone, I want you to hear this. The table is not the problem, the people around it are. And somewhere out there, someone is setting a place for you right now. You just have not found that kitchen yet. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to be part of our story-loving community. I'll see you in the next.